is a Beach Glass Media production.
According to their website, the Southern Poverty Law Center is a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization whose mission is to be a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond, working in partnership with communities to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people. Founded a little over half a century ago, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been working tirelessly to ensure that the promise of the civil rights movement can become a reality for everyone. And since the SPLC's inception, they have single-handedly won numerous landmark legal victories on behalf of the exploited, the powerless, and the forgotten. That's right, folks. Thanks to the Southern Poverty Law Center, their lawsuits have toppled institutional racism, stamped out remnants of Jim Crow segregation, and they have destroyed some of the nation's most violent white supremacist groups. And thanks to this efficacious nonprofit organization, well, racism in America is now but a fleeting moment in the passage of time. So, why is the Southern Poverty Law Center in the news, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. Turns out, when you run out of racism in the country, you have to do some uncanny things. But let's be serious. What in tarnation is a 501c3 supposed to do when racism begins to vanish? Close shop? No. I mean, the Southern Poverty Law Center raises hundreds of millions of dollars annually. So are they just supposed to give it back to their donors? No. So what did the Southern Poverty Law Center do to get themselves indicted by the Department of Justice? Well, they were found funding neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and the Ku Klux Klan with their millions of dollars. Yeah, well, I guess the Democrat Party really hasn't changed much since the days of slavery. It's safe to say that the inner machinations of the mind of the Southern Poverty Law Center are an enigma. My name is Andrew Reyes, and this is Faith in Politics with me, Andrew Reyes. All right, welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Andrew Reyes, where I use AI. Andrew intelligence. I'm trying to make it a mission in life to use as little of AI as possible when I'm doing my podcasts and doing research because, the brain's a muscle. You got to exercise it. And if you're just using AI, I think that's kind of like cheating. And I really want to use my personal brain power to make these episodes because, one, you'll get the most of me, I think, if I'm just trying to rationalize my thoughts, I should say, to really make these thoughts my own. Now, it's easy to copycat other people's ideas, but, I think it's a lost art to sit and think, with by yourself. Do people ever just sit alone and just spend time with their thoughts? I don't know. But anyway, that's what I like to do when I'm delivering that good old-fashioned mail as a mailman is, sometimes I just like to think. I like to observe and think about the things that are going on around me. So, and I think you should too. I think it's a good exercise. But with that jibber jabber nonsense, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Once again, if you're listening to this, say on Apple Podcasts, you can watch the video podcast version of this podcast on YouTube and Spotify. So feel free to check me out there. Once again, I'm just this Hispanic looking dude with a microphone, nothing very special or nothing crazy going on in the video sector of this podcast. It's just me talking into a mic. So if you want to see what I look like, you can watch me on YouTube or Spotify. And with that said, don't forget to like, subscribe. Let's say you just stumbled onto this podcast and you're like, what's this dude got to say today? And if you find yourself enjoying what you're listening to, like, subscribe, rate, review, leave me a comment down below, and feel free to message me. I'm more than happy to answer whatever questions you might have, or if you have any comments, I'm happy to read your comments. So also, follow the Instagram page. That's where I post a lot of updates to the podcast, and I post satirical headlines, which you might find funny. I don't know. But you can check that out on Instagram. That's probably the best way to reach out to me if you're interested in reaching out to me. But you can also email me at faithandpoliticsandrew@gmail.com. It would be nice to see something real coming into the inbox. Usually I get a lot of spam stuff, which I don't think they're genuine messages. So feel free to send me a line. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin episode 26, called The Loony Left Loves Violence. Now, before we get into all the political discussion, I do like to start the podcast with something in the faith realm. What does that mean, Andrew? What are you talking about, the faith realm? Well, it's no surprise. I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. I read the Bible. I pray to God. It's one of those things that I do. Do I do it enough? I don't think so. So, this podcast isn't to bash anybody. If anything, it's more me talking to myself. The things that I say on here, I like to think that I'm directing it to me. Sorry, my leg was itchy. I don't know why my leg was itchy right there. So if you saw me reaching under the table and looking weird, my leg got itchy. But as I was saying, I'm not here to bash anyone or to make fun of anyone. Actually, no, that's not true. I will make fun of people on this podcast because, well, people are funny and people do weird and strange things. And I think if people put themselves out there in the internet publicly, I think it's fair game to criticize and maybe ridicule it. But I don't ridicule the people. I like to ridicule bad ideas, and that's what's going to happen today, as you will see. But in the faith topic, let me stick to the faith. I'm trying to stay in this lane of faith here. Now, in the previous episodes, I was touching on forgiveness. And today, I'm going to switch it up a bit and talk about something else. It's related to forgiveness. Everything's related to forgiveness when it comes to the Christian faith. But I just had some ideas, things that's been sitting on my mind, and I just want to get it out there. So like I said, I'm a Christian. What does that mean? What is a Christian? Maybe you're stumbling onto this video and you're like, I don't know. I'm curious about what Christianity's all about. And I just want to say, I'm probably not the person to teach you everything about Christianity. I would recommend getting connected to a local church, because that's where, I don't know, that's where the reality of Christianity kind of lives. Church is the people, and the people there are there to fellowship and to worship God and to fellowship with other believers. And I think that is the best way to interact with the Christian faith, to follow God. If you're seeking God, is to get connected to a church. That's where the people are. A church is the people, and that's where things happen. That's where growth happens. So I get it. Everyone's online. Everyone's on the internet. It's easy to click on a video where you're safe in your room, or I don't know, you just put your headphones on. But really, the best way to experience the Christian life is to get connected to a church. So with that said, there's something that was interesting. There's this customer on my route when I'm delivering that good old-fashioned mail that I, occasionally chit-chat with. And it all started when I got my new delivery route. And it's funny, one of my coworkers, he found out I was doing this podcast. And then for some reason, he started telling everybody he knows. And I'm like, that's kind of embarrassing. I wasn't really seeking to tell the whole world that I have a podcast because, you know how people are. Some people are going to laugh. Some people are going to say weird things about you. And yeah, that does happen. I had some good friends. They just started making fun of me and using AI to put silly things in the video. And it's all fun and games. Like I said before, I don't get easily offended. I don't care. You can make fun of me. I don't care. So one of my coworkers was telling all his old customers, like, oh yeah, this guy, he's going to be our new mailman, and he has this podcast. He talks about Christianity and politics. So I started my new route, and then this guy who heard about me, we have a rapport. We have an understanding. He's a Christian too, and what was interesting about this guy that I met is I can tell that he really cares about the Christian faith, but I also see that he kind of struggles with how the lowercase c church kind of handles certain things. And I think this became a popular speaking topic, like, say, 20 years ago with the whole deconstructionist movement, people that were being hurt by the church. And of course, I take into consider all those things and people's stories about growing up in church and the things that they witnessed, how they were treated, maybe not the best by the church. And I know even my wife, before we got married, and I introduced her to my church, and we were going, there were things that some people said that she took offense to certain things, and I get it. It is a different world that you're stepping into. Say if you weren't a Christian and then you do get convinced, or you grow faith into the ideas of God and wanting to know more about the Christian faith, and then you do go to church, and then maybe you realize, hey, this is different than what I'm used to. And I get it, church is, compared to the secular world, it's strange. I mean, I grew up in it. I was born going to church since I was a little kid. My parents took me to church. So to me, the church life, the setting, everything that's there, it's normal to me. But I can understand how some people might be thrown off by certain things, and how what people say, what people do, how people act, how people behave, the Christianese, that language that you hear in church culture, which I'm not knocking. It's totally fine, but I get it. It's a different world, for lack of a better term. So this guy on my route, I think he's seen things that that bothered him, and I totally get it. I don't want to go into too much detail about what his issues are, because that's no one's business. But I just want to say that, the church is the people. We think that it's the building that we see on the street corner that, has a steeple and a cross on top. And yep, that's church. That's church. Oh, there's a church over there. There's a church over there. And yeah, I mean, in a certain sense, yes, but the reality of church is that church is the people. The people make up the church. The people in the Bible, they're called the body of Christ. The people represent Jesus. The people are the church. And one thing that we have to remember is that people are not perfect. But it's this paradox that Christians are to live a certain way, behave a certain way, because once again, when we come to the faith, we repent, which means we just turn from our old ways and we learn what the truth is, and we learn how what Jesus said, how we should live our lives, and we want to live in accordance to that. So, theoretically, Christians should be living a righteous, moral life. But once again, the people are not perfect. We screw up. We may sin, but we don't make it a habitual thing to sin. It's not something that we're trying to do. People who don't live the Christian life, that's something that they don't think about. But a Christian, that is something that Christians wrestle with, is this idea of sin, because we know that Jesus came to die for our sins. So yes, that is the beauty of grace, that God gave us his son to die on the cross for our sins. So therefore we are made new, we're clean before his eyes. But it doesn't mean that we make a habit of sinning, because do we just sin so that God's grace can take over? I don't see it that way. I think there are some sects of Christianity or denominations that may see it that way, but I don't. I think we are called to live in accordance with Jesus, his right ways of doing things, righteousness. And that's how we will have a life that is flourishing if we follow the commands of Jesus. Love your neighbor as yourself. Don't worship false gods, but, worship the one true God, things of that nature. But, it's like I was saying, it's a paradox. It's like a marriage. What is a marriage? A marriage, you have a man and a woman coming together. And what's so interesting about marriage is that, men and women, and I'm going to die on this hill, men and women are really different. Not just biologically, but just in the things that most men and most women are into, socially. So in a marriage, you have these two, to me, it seems like men and women are on two different solar systems coming together and trying to make it work. Of course, I'm simplifying it, but the point I'm trying to make is you have two people coming together from two different planets, and in a marriage, it's this covenant agreement that you will love each other through the good, through the bad. And yeah, it gets tough, Me and my wife, do we argue? Yes, all the time. Do we fight? Yeah. But do I love her? Yes. And I think that's when we think of a marriage, we can kind of see how the church might be the same. We love our God, he's what brings us together. But do some people get on our nerves? Yeah. Now I'm not whoever's listening, to this who fellowships with me at church. I'm not thinking about you. Trust me, I'm not thinking about you. But yeah, are there people that rub me the wrong way, maybe get on my nerves? Sure, that's normal. Why is it okay? Why do I think it's okay? Because we're learning, we're growing, we're coming together. Not everybody's perfect. Just like a family, you have a family, you don't really get to choose your family, and some family members might get on your nerves, but you still love them, you still care about them, and hopefully you don't disown any of your family members, but it's a family. A family is, you're connected by blood. You can't really change that. And it's something inescapable, your family is your family, and that's just reality. So same thing with church, you got your church family. No, not everyone's as perfect as you. And so you just have to practice forgiveness and understanding that, you are bound to get hurt. You're bound to be let down by people. But, yeah, it's just, I was just thinking about that as I was talking to this customer of mine, because, he brought up how the Pope and Trump were going at it the other week. I think it was a couple weeks now. And, the Pope was saying certain things about how the president is handling the whole Iran issue. And Trump was saying, oh, the Pope, why is he meddling into American politics or something of that nature? But yeah, we see this kind of back and forth all around us. But where was I going with this? We all fall short. And yeah, my point is, don't give up on the church. That's what I'm trying to say here. Is don't give up on the church because, well, Jesus didn't give up on you. As Frank Turek says, he's a Christian apologist that I really enjoy listening to. He said something that really stuck with me, and it makes perfect sense when it comes to, judging what goes on in church circles, is that if someone plays Beethoven poorly, like say, you go to a concert and someone's going to play Beethoven, but they play Beethoven poorly, you don't blame Beethoven, right? And it's the same thing with Christianity. If a Christian, someone who considers themselves a Christian and proclaims themselves as a Christian, if they represent Jesus poorly, you don't blame Jesus. Because, like I said, we have this human nature. We're capable of sinning. So, yeah, you might run into Christians that you might find that they might be hypocritical. But that's when you just have to learn to love and to forgive. I'm not saying it's easy, but I do say that's what Jesus commands of us to do. But yeah, what are Christians supposed to represent? Well, we're supposed to represent the gospel. And the gospel is the good news of Jesus, which, Jesus instructed the church to tell the world about him, about what he did on that cross, that he raised from the dead, and he did that to make a new way for us to have a relationship with him. And yeah, that is what my pastor preached about a few Sundays ago, and this is the second part of the faith topic that I wanted to touch on, is what my pastor preached on a couple Sundays ago, and a few things stood out to me. What was he talking about? Well, he was talking about the Great Commission. And what is the Great Commission? Well, the Great Commission is go out and tell the whole world about Jesus, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, making disciples. And you could read all about that in the book of Matthew, chapter 28, is Jesus commands his followers to make disciples, baptize people, and to observe everything Jesus did on earth and to live it out. And yeah, I like what I've heard this from many people. It's that the Great Commission is not the Great Suggestion. Okay, it's not like, if you feel like it, you can tell someone about Jesus, or if you feel like, if you don't feel like it today, don't worry about it. But maybe if you get motivated and 5 years from now, you should go. You should go tell people the gospel. No. It's not the Great Suggestion. It's the Great Commission. It's a command. It's like, go do this. It's make disciples, basically. What is a disciple? Well, a disciple is someone who lives out Jesus. Someone who prays, reads the Bible. Someone who wants to learn. And someone who spends quality time with others, investing time in other people. It's living out Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he talked about the Beatitudes, the Golden Rule. Yeah, read the Sermon on the Mount. It's a really good place to start. You get a good sense of who Jesus is. But yeah, disciples. They carry out the message of Jesus wherever they go, and it's not about making crowds. It's not about consuming content. Talking about Jesus carrying out the message, it's about making disciples. And I can think of one guy in my life who, I really spent a lot of time with him. He's my friend Luigi, the guy that moved to Vegas. But we went to college together. That's where I met him. We became friends. And at the time I was in a discipleship class. I wanted to tell this guy about my faith, and I did. And he was my student, which I discipled many years ago. And the cool thing is we're still friends to this day, even though he moved out to Vegas. Every now and then he'll come visit. He takes the Greyhound over here and we hang out. And it's really, really nice to have a friend like that. We connected in school, and then I told him about Jesus, and he, I think he grew up Catholic, but he wasn't really practicing. But I could tell it was in him, and he really took to it, and I'm really proud of him because he stuck by it, and he found a church when he moved out to Vegas, got connected, and yeah, it's really something special when you're able to disciple someone, to tell someone about Jesus and then watch them grow. It's a very beautiful thing. Now, Jesus spent 3.5 years with his disciples, before he went to that cross. So he really spent a lot of time with his disciples, the 12 guys. Now, were these 12 men perfect? No, not at all. And what I like about the people that Jesus chose is that most of them were just regular dudes. Like, they were fishermen. You had Matthew. He was a tax collector. So, he was kind of hated because he was in charge of collecting taxes from everybody. But yeah, you had all kinds of people. And I just have to remind myself that the people that Jesus chose were just normal, average, random dudes. Maybe not random because they were chosen for a specific task, but they were just lay people, and that just shows that Jesus can use anybody, and it's kind of why I do this podcast, because I'm like, I'm just a regular person. I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy in the room. I really don't think that. I don't think I'm that smart, but because there's way smarter people out there than me online. But But I'm not going to lie. It is something that I'm passionate about Jesus. He's my savior, and he was a real person who really lived, and he's alive. I truly believe that. So yeah, if you're passionate about something, you will talk about it. I have friends that talk about the Dodgers. They're passionate about that. They're passionate about sports. Whatever you're passionate about, you will talk about it. It's just reality, and there's nothing really crazy or insane, to talk about Jesus, because if you're passionate about it, you just talk about it. But yeah, were these disciples perfect? No. I mean, Peter denied Jesus. Okay. Judas sold Jesus. He sold him out for money. And then Thomas, he doubted Jesus after Jesus resurrected. So you would think these people that spent 3.5 years with Jesus would be strong and stand firm. But no, they were normal people, and they weren't perfect. Nobody's perfect except Jesus. You'll hear me say that a lot on this podcast. But yeah, being a disciple is not about perfection. It's about carrying the message of Jesus. And that message is, it's a message of hope. It's a message of love. It's a message of mercy and grace. All these things that are good, true, and beautiful. It's preserving what is good, true, and beautiful, and then passing it on and helping others to grow. Now, I'm not saying I do this perfectly, but like I said, it's one of the reasons why I do this podcast. I think it's like I said, it's an exercise for me to do this. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but if growing up in the church, growing up in the faith, like the customer that I was talking about, it's funny. He saw me delivering his mail, and he comes up to me, "Hey, I just want to talk to you, something just between us. What'd he say? Baby bottle milk drinking Christians, And I know what he meant. He meant like, we're still drinking that milk. We're still growing, like a baby drinks milk as they're growing. Now, a part of me wanted to be like, hey, I've been a Christian for 30 plus years. But I think it did kind of humble me a little bit to think, yeah, you know what? Am I studying enough? Am I reading the Bible enough? Am I praying as much as I should? Probably not. So I'm really glad that he said that, because it keeps me in tune with myself, and if I'm doing everything according to God's ways. But so like I said, I'm not saying I'm an expert and that I know everything, but what I am saying is that it does matter, and it is important. So yeah, that's everything that I want to talk to you today about on the faith portion of the podcast. So now we're going to shift gears and jump into some politics now. And I wonder if whoever's listening to this or subscribes on either YouTube or Spotify, is there a part of the podcast you enjoy more? Do you like the faith side of it, or do you like the politics side of it? Let me know. Leave me a comment. I'm really curious. Like, I get in my head, I think maybe people hate the politics side because they know me as the Christian dude. And then, but on the other hand, I think some people hate the Christian talk because they're like, I just want to hear the politics. I don't know. Let me know. But yeah, let's talk about politics now. Shifting gears, let's move forward. First, because I've been talking about Iran, this is the big thing in the news. I'm going to quickly talk about Iran, however you want to pronounce it. But yeah, let's see what happened. So good news. Trump opened up the Strait of Hormuz just like he said he would. But then it closed. And then it opened. and then it closed. Okay. there's, there's been like different rounds of negotiations. Trump's trying to talk to the people of Iran, whoever's in charge. It's hard to tell who's really in charge. I mean, they put some new guy in charge, but he might still be in a coma, missing a leg. And then I remember hearing in the news that they were saying he's gay because he was going to like somewhere in Europe to talk to a doctor about helping his erectile dysfunction. So it's funny that the people in charge of throwing these shooting these rockets all over the place, and now they got this new guy in charge. He can't even get his rocket to shoot. Okay, it's a joke. It was a joke. Relax, people. It's a joke. There's been negotiations. The strait is open and it's closed. And then Trump sent the Navy in to facilitate the blockade. And I think there was a point in time last week where ships were going through, but then something happened and then it shut again. It's just crazy. It's kind of hard to tell what's really going on. But as of today, it seems like Trump is commanding the blockade to continue, and it's going to be the blockade is going to continue indefinitely. So it's hard to tell how long this is going to last. Now, of course, there's been a lot of criticism about this. People are worried, how much is this going to cost the U.S.? Things of that nature, and it's hard to tell. How would you know? It just depends on how long this blockade will last and if negotiations can be made. Now, when Pete Hegseth was pressed about how much this was going to cost, he basically said, well, it's going to cost less than if Iran had nuclear weapons. So, but what do we know? What do we know? The things we do know is that Iran is severely crippled because of these strikes. Okay, and I think they're losing steam. It seems that way. And I think there's a couple things going on. Iran's, the rial, that's their currency. It's basically worthless currently. Okay, they're losing. Okay, all the signs point that the Iranian regime is losing. It's hurting them economically. Every day that goes by, where ships can't cross the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is losing a ton of money, and it's hurting them greatly. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If the conflict is resolved, then all of Trump's objectives are met. No nuclear weapons in Iran, open the Strait of Hormuz, let everything flow through there per usual, as normally. Then I really believe that Trump's going to go down as the best U.S. president of my lifetime that the United States has ever had, especially in the global affairs department. Because, Barack Obama was terrible. He had the original Iran deal, which was garbage, which is probably what led up to Iran developing nuclear weapons. And then you had Biden. He was pretty much a joke when it came to foreign affairs. But yeah, Trump can go down as the best president of my lifetime, especially on the foreign affairs department. However, if this operation is a failure, it will ruin Trump's legacy. There's no doubt about that. So it would be a shame, because I think Trump has done a lot of good for the country, especially in the second term. Just in the first year alone, we fixed the crisis at the border. Just to name one thing that off the top of my head. But yeah. Did you guys hear about I mentioned in my satire opening the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's totally true. Of course, I made it a satirical opening on this podcast, but yeah, it turns out this nonprofit. Sorry, yeah, I'm shifting gears. Okay, done with Iran, moving to the Southern Poverty Law Center. That was big in the news. Yeah, the Southern Poverty Law Center, this organization that was created to fight racism, especially, white supremacy and all that stuff. It turns out the SPLC was giving millions of dollars to the KKK. I mean, even I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, I was just like, wow, you're telling me all I had to do to get millions of dollars for free was to be a Klansman? And then this nonprofit would give me millions of dollars? Like, man, give me the money. Okay, I'm obviously joking, but the real question is the SPLC joking? That's pretty crazy. So from the Office of Public Affairs, from their website, it says this: federal grand jury charges Southern Poverty Law Center for wire fraud, false statements, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. And in the article, it says the SPLC is manufacturing racism to justify its existence, said Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Using donor money to allegedly profit off Klansmen cannot go unchecked. This Department of Justice will hold the SPLC and every other fraudulent organization operating with the same deceptive playbook accountable. No entity is above the law. So, yeah, this organization that was meant to fight racism is giving money to racists. Make it make sense, please. But yeah, there was an interesting fact that Joe Biden, he had this case opened under his presidency, and then he decided to close it. So it's crazy. Like, Biden could have done so much, but it just seems like he didn't do anything. And so now it's like Trump is trying to do everything that all this time was lost, and it seems like Trump's trying to make up for it. But yeah, good on Trump for, that this is happening under Trump's presidency, because once again, it just shows that elections have consequences and that Trump is exposing corruption all over this country. So speaking of corruption, the U.S. Department of Justice just indicted David Morens, an Anthony Fauci advisor during the whole COVID-19 era. So this is a report that I read from the Daily Wire. It states, the United States Department of Justice announced on Tuesday that Dr. David Morens, once a top aide to Dr. Anthony Fauci, was indicted for his role in hiding data on the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. Morens, according to a press release from the DOJ, was charged with conspiracy against the United States, destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations, concealment, removal, or mutilation of records, and aiding and abetting. So apparently this guy, David Morens, bragged about being able to make emails disappear. This was a guy working with Dr. Anthony Fauci during the whole pandemic, scamdemic. And it's crazy that this is coming out too, because, everyone was wondering why so many Americans don't trust the government, the so-called experts. And I don't know, this was brought to my attention during the pandemic, is that, we had the pandemic, we had COVID-19. I still remember it like it was yesterday. It started to grow in the news. I was in San Diego on a trip with my wife, having a good time, and then everything was shut down. Couldn't do much. The hotel didn't have food or food service, so we had to go out in San Diego downtown just looking for food. And even then, it was takeout only. So this trip that I had planned with my wife, it was kind of lame because we couldn't really do much because of the COVID scare. And then what happened? They said, well, just keep 6 feet apart from everybody. And then we're like, why 6 feet? They're like, I don't know. It just sounds good. And then they said, oh, mask up. And we're like, oh, mask up. Does it slow the spread? Does it do anything? Turns out it didn't do anything. People still pass it around. And they said, okay, get the shot. Yeah, it's effective. And like, really? Like, you tested it out? Yeah, we tested it out. So we all get the shot. We're like, okay, so we can go out in public, right? Yeah, you can go out in public. And then what happened? People were spraying it even more. And they were like, well, you got to get the booster. And so what did I do? I got the booster. And like, now we're okay, right? Now we can go back to normal. They're like, no, double mask. And it's like, what are we doing? And then, COVID started to spread even more, even with the vaccine and the masks and the 6 feet. And they shut down the beaches. They shut down the parks for the kids. They said, don't go to school and all this stuff. And it turns out, did people die? Yes. But it was a specific group. It was like the really, really old people or people with like asthma or pre-existing conditions. But if you were healthy as a horse, it's like, just go on about your day. Don't. And then, the worry was, the little kids, like, no little kids were dying. Okay. The percentage of children dying was so tiny. It was like an iota. But yeah, it was shut down. And then the whole George Floyd thing happened. People started rioting in the streets during the height of that pandemic, and everyone said, yeah, go out, go burn buildings. It's totally fine. Just wear a mask. Just wear a mask while you're burning down your cities. But yeah, there are reasons why Americans have lost trust in certain institutions. And it's not coming out of nowhere. There are valid reasons. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So good that this the guy working with Anthony Fauci, Anthony Fauci, the guy that said, I am the science, in one of his speeches or his hearings. If someone says they are the science, yeah, you're full of it. But yeah, let's get to the big news. This is what you were waiting for, the big news. This is what this episode is supposed to focus about. The Loony left loves violence, and this is what I'm talking about here. Is the third assassination attempt on our president. Yep. It's the reason why I wanted to make this episode is for this incident, this chaotic scene that broke out, and everyone saw it. If you live online, you know what happened. The point that I'm going to make is that almost all the political violence that we've been seeing in recent years is exclusively from the left. Okay. And the worst part is it's becoming normal, It's normal for the left to use violence for political means. I'm not just making that up. And if you don't want to believe me, I can prove it to you clear as day. So the big story is this. This crazy dude from Torrance, California. Okay. I grew up in Lomita. I grew up in San Pedro. And when I was a teenager in San Pedro and you finally learn to drive, what's the first thing you do? You hang out in Torrance because that's where the big mall is, and you can just spend your time at the mall and go to the movie theaters and, all that good stuff. That's in Torrance. So I grew up in Torrance. So this story really hit close to home when I heard that this assassin, this guy that tried to kill the president, was from Torrance, California. Right here. It's close to home. I hang out in Torrance. My church is in Torrance. In fact, this guy, his family, lives a couple blocks down from where I go to church. Yeah, so the guy's name, Cole Allen, 31 years old. So he's just a few years younger than me. He worked as a teacher. He worked at C2 Education, and I looked it up. And yeah, it's right there on Hawthorne Boulevard in Torrance, across from the mall. So this guy worked there as an educator, as a tutor. And, you know, that's just a normal profession, right? I worked as a tutor. So it's just a normal job. Let's see, this guy had a bachelor's degree from Caltech. He had a master's degree from Cal State Dominguez Hills. He worked as a game developer, an engineer. He was a registered voter with no party preference. However, he did donate to Kamala Harris's campaign. And this really struck me, is that the internet posted pictures of this guy and his family from his social media accounts. And to my surprise, they look like an average family, like a good, well-to-do family. 2 parents, 4 siblings. They were a church-going family, apparently. The father was like an elder at the church, a church in Torrance. And yeah, like I said, the family lived literally down the street from my church. So it's just crazy to think, what led up to this? What led up to this? And if you know, online, you could find people were posting this guy's manifesto. And one of the things he states at the beginning is the following. He said, "And I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, a rapist, and a traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." And when I saw that, I was like, I wonder where we've heard that a million times before. And it's really no surprise if you really think about it. If you've been watching the news, if you're engaged with the culture, if you're just on social media, you know where that kind of rhetoric comes from. This this guy that attempted to assassinate the president, you just know he just hung out online. For instance, actor Mark Ruffalo, you know, the guy who played the Hulk in the Marvel movies, he stated in an interview on the red carpet, he said he called Trump a pedophile, a rapist, on camera. You can watch it. Also, Representative Ted Lieu. Okay, Ted Lieu, he's my representative here in California. He's supposed to represent me. He's also on video accusing Trump of raping children and threatening to kill children. Okay. Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, I forget where she's from, but she said that in order to, these are her words, to eliminate abuse and fraud, we have to eliminate the president right now. Okay, these are just the things that are coming out of people's mouths. Okay, people in our in our politics, people that we've elected to represent us. Another thing that's also in the news, James Comey, he was recently indicted. He's the guy that posted the pictures of the seashells that he supposedly found on the beach, and the seashells were in they were in this formation that just magically appeared. It said 8647, so it was the numbers 8647 in the sand, made by seashells. And people who work in restaurants or video games say that, 86 means to get rid of something, or to, and I think in the gaming world, to kill someone. Like, we got to 86 that guy, or we got to 86 that thing. It means to get rid of, to eliminate, to kill. Okay, doesn't take someone with a PhD to figure that one out. But yeah, James Comey, he was a politician. 86-47. 47 representing Trump as the 47th president. So, you get the picture there. Jay Jones, Attorney General for the state of Virginia. This guy that got recently elected, I think it was this year, actually, a couple months ago. He had text messages saying that he wanted to see Republican children killed. And he said that came out during his campaign. And you would think that if these text messages from a U.S. politician running for Attorney General of the state of Virginia came out, that people would be just appalled. But nope, he still won. He's the Attorney General, and he would send messages to people saying that Republicans' children should be killed. But yeah, not just politicians, but the whole thing with Luigi Mangione. Remember Luigi Mangione? He's the one that killed the United Healthcare CEO I think it was at the beginning of this year, if I remember correctly. Was it the beginning of this year or last year? But anyway, what did the people on the left do? Well, they glorified him. They said, yeah, killing the United Healthcare CEO is great because people are dying because they can't afford health insurance or whatever. And people were celebrating this guy. The people on the left, they were saying that what he did was good. What he did was good. To kill a CEO of a company who was just walking down the street one night and just shooting him in the back of the head, like, that's good. That gets celebrated. Like, I swear, the people on the left, they were like, the women reporters were like dropping their panties for this guy. Like, you could see it. You would see it everywhere, and it's just crazy. And who could forget when Charlie Kirk was assassinated? The people on the left, they celebrated Charlie's death. They justified it, like, yeah, that's so great. That guy who just wanted to talk about lowering the tax rates for American citizens. Yeah, we're glad we killed that guy. Yeah, they were happy. They were saying, okay, you got Charlie, Trump next, things like that. That's the people on the left. There were also in the news cast members of The View. The View. I don't know who watches that. I think just women watch it. The View. With Whoopi Goldberg and other old hags. They stated that they were glad, or someone on the cast said that they were glad that at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that people felt fear. That they were happy that they felt fear when that would-be assassin tried to assassinate Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. They're happy that they felt fear. But not just the women at The View. Maxine Waters, she's a California representative. You're from my state. She's been on video saying in the past, if you see anyone from that cabinet, Trump's cabinet, that if you see them at a restaurant, a gas station, you create a crowd and tell them you're not welcome. Now, it sounds peaceful and all, but we know what she's implying. Go get a crowd, make a commotion. It's just this rhetoric of go after them, make them feel not welcome. There's this internet streamer, for those of you who spent all your time on the internet, you probably heard of this guy named Destiny. He said, good. Republicans should fear for their lives. good. Republicans should fear for their lives. Oh, yeah, he sounds like a nice guy. He wants citizens to feel fear. Another guy that's been making the news recently, Hassan Piker. He's also kind of an internet streamer, but he's really a Marxist nut job, and he's been platformed by the New York Times. The New York Times, a big newspaper, they wrote a piece on this guy saying that, Hassan Piker is not the bad guy, but what's some of the things that Hassan Piker has said? Well, for one, he said, "Let the streets soak in their red capitalist blood." And he's also said things like America deserved 9/11. And this is who the New York Times, they platform him. They write pieces on him saying that, hey, Hassan Piker's not really a bad guy. How do you square that circle? Let's see, Madonna in the past. I saw videos of Madonna. Another has-been. I don't know why she's still relevant, but also said, I have thought, she's on video saying this, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. I can't remember what that was in response to what, but celebrities, musical artists saying this kind of stuff, not just Madonna, but also Snoop Dogg. There's a video that he put out. I don't know when. I think it's an old video, maybe from Trump's first presidency. I don't know. But in his music video, Snoop Dogg's music video, it shows this Trump figure, but dressed up as a clown. And then you see Snoop Dogg holding a gun to his head. It's a toy gun. And then he shoots it, and it's one of those toy guns where a flag comes out, and a little flag says bang. But obviously, Snoop Dogg is a popular public figure, popular artist, and in his music videos, he's blowing Trump's head off with a toy gun, but you get the point. So yeah, that's the culture, that's you got politicians, you got internet people, you got musical artists, but also another politician in Michigan. I just heard about this one. There's a man running for state senator named Abdul El Sayed, and he just said on video during one of his rallies, he said, if they go low, he's talking about, I'm pretty sure he's talking about Republicans. If they go low, we don't go high. We take them to the mud and we choke them out. Once again, it's this violent rhetoric, and this is people, Democrat politicians, people on the left, these radical leftists. Like I mentioned before, the BLM riots, the Summer of Love, the people, it's not, if you look at reports about the BLM riots, they're not really seen as political violence for whatever reason, but obviously it's political because all activism is political. But the BLM riots, the Black Lives Matter riots after George Floyd overdosed on fentanyl, what was the outcome? There was $1 to $2 billion in damages to the city. $1 to $2 billion. And like I said, for some reason not classified as political violence, but they destroyed property, destroyed people's livelihoods. There was rioting, looting, people died. But that's okay because it's activism. It's just activism. It's just people speaking their mind. I don't get it. Let's see. On college campuses, Antifa. Yeah, for some reason they're not they're not considered political. What they do is not political violence, but it most certainly is. They go to college campuses, they bring weapons. There's been videos of people handing out weapons, like undercover videos. So why are they handing out weapons to other Antifa members if they're not going to use them? it's just for self-defense. I doubt it's for self-defense. But yeah, Antifa comes to these college campuses wearing all in black, covering their faces. Why? Because they don't want conservatives to speak on college campuses, that they get invited to speak, and then Antifa, they start destroying businesses as well in protest. Like that's violence. Damaging property is a violent act. You got late night hosts calling Trump fascists, even though they don't know what a fascist is or what it means. They just throw that word around like it's going out of style. Jimmy Kimmel, 2 nights before the latest assassination attempt at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, he made this joke saying that Melania has a glow. He's pretending to do his version of a Correspondents' Dinner in his little skit. And he said, Melania, Trump's wife. They show a video of Melania, and then it cuts back to Jimmy Kimmel, and he says, Melania has this glow like an expectant widow. Like Jimmy Kimmel. I don't think I've ever laughed at one of his jokes. Like I've tried really hard. I think I watched 2 trillion of his videos, and I couldn't laugh at any of his jokes because he's not funny. He considers himself a comedian, but his jokes are not funny. And for some reason, they want to keep paying this guy. It doesn't make sense to me, but maybe the people, the higher ups, maybe they think he's funny. I doubt they think he's funny. But yeah, saying jokes like Melania looks like she has a glow like an expectant widow. It's what does that mean? It means they wish Trump to die, basically. Of course, he's going to say, oh, it was a joke. Like, sure, that's a joke. So funny. Let's see. The No Kings protesters calling Trump a king when 1, he is not a king. And 2, this was interesting. King Charles came to America a few days ago, and he's an actual king. And then the No Kings crowd gave King Charles a standing ovation. And it's like, wait, weren't you just saying no kings? But King Charles, he's a king, like an actual king. I mean, he has soft power. Doesn't really rule anything, but it's in his name, King Charles. So Trump, not a king. You say no kings. King Charles, a king. But yeah, that king, cool. Please make it make sense. Please, I'm asking you. I'm begging you. I'm pleading. Make it make sense. I don't get it. But yeah, the left calls Trump a Nazi all the time. They call him a Nazi. They call him Hitler. And there's this phrase that I keep seeing online, and I think it sums it up nicely, is that it says this: they don't call you a Nazi. They don't kill you because you are a Nazi. They call you a Nazi so they can kill you. They want to give you a reason. If they paint you in a negative way, then they'll have a reason to, 1, have violent rhetoric, but then 2, commit acts of violence. The left, they need that reason to commit political violence because they are, this is what I think. I think the Democrat Party, they house all these leftists in their party. And I think that they are so unpopular right now that they have to lie in order to get their way, to win elections. I think that's their strategy, is to lie. And people get radicalized. And they start to believe what these other radical people say with their violent rhetoric. And so then that gives them a reason to commit violence, like actual violence on people. And then it's justified to them. Like, no, we have these reasons to commit political violence. Now, there were some polls that have been coming out, and they suggest that 40% of Americans with a graduate degree or a professional degree, they now say violence is often necessary to create social change. 40% of Americans with degrees. 40% of Gen Z said that the murder of the United Healthcare CEO is acceptable. That's 40%. 22% of liberals under 44 say that it's okay to feel happy when a political opponent dies. So that's almost like 1 in 4 people say that they feel happy. 1 in 4 liberals, I should say, feel happy when someone of their opposite political affiliation dies. They feel happy. That's crazy. But also the culture. What was that movie that won the best picture this year? One Battle After the Next. It won like 6 Oscar awards or something, Academy Awards. One Battle After the Next. What was that movie about? I didn't see it, to be honest. I didn't see it, but from what I read and heard about it, it was about white supremacists and people fighting them and justifying their violence against white supremacists. Now, for the record, I'm not defending white supremacy in any way, but that is in the culture what is happening. That these big budget films are being made about political violence. So another thing, NPR's All Things Considered podcast, one of the hosts said in a recent podcast that Cole Allen, the attempted shooter this last weekend, that he was what did they say? A normal guy. And that's the point. That's the point that I'm trying to make, that he was a normal person. And that's just the mainstream now. It's normal, it's mainstream to have political violence. In their minds, political violence is normal. This guy was a normal guy. And he believed that violence was the answer. Now, it didn't used to be like this, but all the signs point to that political violence is mainstream for people on the left. It's just normal. Cole Allen, he was a privileged, college-educated person with a loving family. He worked in education. These are all normal things. And now even the normal person on the left side of the political aisle may celebrate your death if he finds out you voted for Trump. And I think what happens is, I think the reason for this is that the left doesn't understand that speech is speech and violence is violence. The left has it mixed up. They think that speech can be violence, and they think that violence is speech. What do I mean? For example, if I say a trans man is really just a woman, then they say that I'm doing violence to this oppressed group. And if I were to say, well, I think, and that's just an opinion, but they think that that's violence. And then the left, when they commit violence, like say, kill Charlie Kirk, kill the United Healthcare CEO, try to assassinate Trump, they say, well, it's just speech. We're just making a statement. We're just, it's just speech. We're just saying we don't like what Trump's doing. We didn't like what Charlie Kirk was doing. It's just our statement. But no, speech is speech. Violence is violence. Speech can't be violent. I mean, it could be hurtful. It could be harmful. It could hurt feelings, I guess, but it's not violence. It's not committing violence onto someone. And violence is violence. It's violence is not speech. Violence is actually doing the damaging, the hurting, the killing. And that's not just speech. It's actual violence. The left has it backwards. They don't know those terms and what they mean and the actual meaning of those terms. What can we do? Like I said, all the violence, especially the rhetoric, it's coming from the left. How should we respond politically? Well, one way is cancel culture. This was big a number of years ago, but we need correct cancel culture. Cancel culture from the left was if you said, trans women are actually men, and then you get canceled and you should lose your job. And it's like, no, we're just saying things that are true. And then, but this new cancel culture that we should have from the right is that you should be canceled if you call people to act violently. So if you're calling for violence, yeah, you should be canceled for that, because violence is wrong. Of course, you have to have a moral mind, and you can only have morals if you believe in God, because otherwise morals are just subjective and you could just make it up on a whim, depending on how you feel that day. But yeah, violence, killing people, it's wrong. Hurting people is wrong. So if people are calling others to act violently, then yeah, we should cancel those people and, I don't know, have them lose their jobs. We can't have violent people, working all around us. No, you gotta lay down some laws. You gotta, the law is a teacher, and sometimes social order is needed. And right now, at least right now, in this current moment in politics, yeah, if people are acting violently or calling for violence, yeah, they should be canceled. They should lose their jobs, and yeah, they should learn a lesson that's not okay. But yeah, if they commit crimes, you prosecute them. If they defame, then you sue them. I like what G.K. Chesterton said. He said, "There's a thought that stops thought, and that's the only thought that ought to be stopped." Now, yeah, I believe in freedom of speech, 100%. But when you're calling people to act violently, that's not protected. The call to violence is not protected, and because that's the thought that ends thought. What does that mean? Like, we should have the freedom to think the things that we want to think and say them in a way that's not, calling people to violence. But if there's a thought that stops thought, that ends people's lives, then yeah, that thought is the only one that should be stopped, because yeah, killing is immoral. God said, "Thou shalt not kill" in the 10 Commandments, for a reason. We can't live in a society where political violence is acceptable. We just can't. A society is not going to function. It's not going to thrive. It's not going to survive. But yeah, that's just my point. All the violence, all the rhetoric is coming from the left. And there's no question about it. You know, when Barack Obama, the first black president of the United States, was president for 2 terms, the American people voted for him for 2 terms. He served for 8 years. Not once did you hear of a white supremacist try to assassinate the president. Now, I think there was one case where someone shot at the White House or a building, but the president wasn't even there. So, you know, we can kind of throw that one away. But, yeah, there was no one on the right calling to assassinate Obama. But the rhetoric from the left towards Trump, it's very violent. So I got to bring this to an end. This has been one of the longest podcast episodes I've done. I did not mean for it to go this long, but sometimes I just get carried away. I'm working on it. I apologize. What can Christians do? Well, we can spread the gospel. We can pray. We can read our Bibles. We can go to church. And we cannot rely on politicians or the government to make our lives better. I don't think that's the purpose of government. Yeah, I mean, they're there to protect and make sure there's social order. But, you know, the government is not God. Okay? Jesus is God. And also, we need to elect the right people into the government. Obviously. I mean, look at New York City. They elected Zoran Mamdani, a socialist Muslim mayor, and now there's a budget crisis there. It's just not working. You know, they're in a crisis. They're in crisis mode, and it's because of who they elected. Was it Washington or Seattle? There was some lady that just came on the record, and she just nonchalantly said about the millionaires and billionaires moving out of her state. She was like, "Oh yeah, bye. We'll be fine without you." It's like, wait, you really don't care that these people that make lots of money and pay high levels of taxes to your state is leaving? You don't care about that? Like, okay. I wish I had her name on hand, but I can't remember. I just saw the video and I'm like, wow, these people on the left, it seems like they really don't care about reality. And how government operates or should operate. But we got to elect the right people into government. But yeah, the left is violent. If you don't believe me, just look at the way they treat children or their perception of children. You know, children being innocent and fragile and in need of guidance. How does the left treat their treat children and babies? Well, for starters, they want to infiltrate children's minds with sexual content, aka LGBT, UV, X, Y, and Z stuff. It's prevalent in newer TV shows. They just kind of sneak it in there. And they also, what does the left do? They promote killing of unborn babies. They call it abortion. And they say abortion is healthcare. So, in other words, killing millions of babies is healthcare. You know, they don't care about what is true, good, and beautiful. I have 3 kids. They're beautiful. They're real. I can see their growth. Me and my wife working together to raise them. We brought them into this world and we work together to raise our kids. It's a beautiful thing. But the left, children, you can just discard them. You can try for another one some other time. Just saying that it's a violent ideology. these people on the left. It's a violent ideology that they have. But yeah, also one of the last things I'm going to say is that, there were people coming out saying that it was staged. I heard this a lot, that what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner with Cole Allen. Oh, it was just staged. It was staged. Really? You really think Trump and Cole Allen were best friends, and Trump was like, hey, be here at this time. Let me show you how to get in. And just bring your weapons. You really think it was staged? People who are saying that this whole attempted assassination was staged, they just mean they don't like how this thing ended. They don't like that Trump didn't get killed, basically. And the cherry on top to all of this is that the people on the left will say, no, there's no left-wing violence. There's no political violence from the left. It's not happening. It's not happening. But it's good that it is happening when it does happen. Because Trump is evil. It's not happening, but it's good that it's happening. It's good that these assassination attempts are happening. But it's not coming from the left. Yeah. That's just the cherry on top. I see it all the time. It's not happening, but it's good that it is happening. Like I said before, I think the reason why, I don't see Democrats condemning this violence. People on the right, they say, oh no, political violence, we condemn it. It should never happen. I don't see a lot of Democrats coming up to the mic, to their cameras and saying, look, we condemn this political violence. I don't see that from Democrat leaders. I don't. And I think it's because they are so unpopular that I think it's the only way they're going to win elections. I think they think, because, like I said, this violence stuff, it's mainstream to the people on the left. Cole Allen was a normal guy. People came out on video saying, oh yeah, I went to school with him. He was such a normal guy. How could this have happened? Yeah, normal people, they on the left, they just love violence. I don't know what to tell you. And if the left can paint you into an evil person, then, because you're a Republican, because you're a conservative, if you're a Christian, if they can paint you as an evil person for being any of those things, well, they will call you evil and not think twice about it. So all I can say is stay vigilant, pray, read your Bible, go to church, be a disciple, vote properly. Love your neighbor. Call out evil. Don't give your money to the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Don't give your money to them, because they're just going to give it to the KKK. But be careful, be educated, and be careful with the educated engineers who design video games and work at tutoring centers, because they might try to kill the president of the United States one day. But most importantly, don't forget, keep up the faith.